In today's episode, our guests Toni and Taiwo Ogebule bring us an inspiring look at their long-distance relationship, showing how embracing self-awareness and prioritizing your own values can help build the foundation for a thriving relationship. Toni, a celebrated author, has inspired millions online by openly sharing her journey towards self-discovery and the wisdom she has learned through her relationships. Her partner, Taiwo, a tech consultant and content creator, brings his own grounded perspective on what makes a long-distance partnership work. In today's episode, we discuss how previous relationships can shape our attachment styles in the future. You said that your ex-partner was avoidant.
Yeah.
You walked in there secure.
Yeah. Did I leave secure? That's the question. One thing I have learned about attachment styles in hindsight is that the way someone loves you can have a massive impact on your existing attachment style.
We dive into the challenges of long-distance relationships.
Long-distance relationships can be very hard, particularly on women, if they don't feel reassured. And it's funny because even though at the beginning he was like, I'm not moving to London, every time he visits, he's like,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I thought I was going to be here for 3 months. That was 6 years ago.
Wow.
And we address how breaking free from societal expectations can help build fulfilling relationships. You're saying that a piece of masculinity is emotional regulation.
Yeah.
I love that.
A lot of guys would say that, well, that is not true. But then they forget that a lot of actions that men have taken throughout the centuries have been based off their emotion. Wars have been started because of
lack of emotional
anger and
regulation.
emotion.
Before we get into it, just wanted to mention something interesting that we've noticed recently. About 92% of the people watching these videos aren't subscribed yet. Now, no pressure at all, but if you're enjoying the content, subscribing is a super simple way to stay connected with us, and it also helps us out a ton when growing the channel. It's free, just takes a second, and it's hugely helpful. Either way, I appreciate you being here. So thanks for watching, and let's get into it. I adore your love for each other.
You.
And it counters a lot of the current day narrative.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, what you're doing is, it's like the world went left, you went right.
Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And so I really want to unpack the two of you individually and as a couple to understand what gives you that confidence to go right.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And I know you've talked a lot about attachment styles.
Yeah.
And Taiwo, it sounds like you had a very secure attachment as well. Yes. And so it makes sense the two of you end up together, right?
Yes.
However, before you two get to each other, you're dating, right? So I would imagine you're dating in the U.S.
Yes.
Which I've been dating in the U.S. is a whole different thing than dating. Actually, let me ask you this too.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
Boy.
Let's buckle in. How would you characterize dating in the United States versus now dating a young woman from the UK?
Okay. They are more intentional for people that they like.
I think they're more intentional in the US than the UK.
Now, I don't really have much information for UK because you're the first person I've dated for UK. So I can only compare my experience in the US to dating her. But
Wait, so I wasn't intentional?
No, you are.
He's saying you're the exception.
Thank you.
You're exceptional.
So here's
That's why he's with you.
So I want to be very clear. If majority of the dating scene in the UK is like how it was for me, then it's amazing.
Right.
That's my answer.
Well done.
This
This is the reality of it. Yes.
This is fair. But can we go here just for a little bit more? So I always say I'm Jamaican. I've got 10 jobs, right? So one of them
I know that.
is that I had global research for Tinder. And one of the things that I can see is what's the difference between the behaviors on the app in the United States and the UK. And one distinct behavior is that when you swipe right and you connect with someone, in the UK, on average, it could take 10 days to 14 days before you start having a conversation off the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the US, it's like 3 hours. You know, it's quick.
Wow.
I'm not surprised by that.
I didn't know it was that quick, but
it's very quick. So in the US, the behavior is that let's just investigate the relationship as quickly as possible. In the UK, it's like, look, I've got tea this afternoon. I'm going to wait a little bit.
I'm not surprised. I think US is more forward.
Right. Do you think it's because I feel like people think that the market is bigger there, so they feel like if they don't act on it, person might lose interest and find someone else. Maybe I'm thinking that could be a reason. I don't have data to back that up. That's just my assumption.
Okay.
Based on that.
It could. Can you talk about, as much as you'd like to talk about, your previous dating history before you met each other? And I think it's so important because it informs how you show up today.
Yeah.
Okay. In all my dating experiences, one thing I'd always known is that before I even give them a chance to go on a date, I know that I've, done my vetting. There's a reason why I actually want to actually consider them to actually go on a date. So knowing that, it makes me not want to hold back. I would trust you until you give me a reason not to.
So you dated a few, but then
yes,
and then the dating is a form of vetting. I would imagine it has to be.
Yes,
right. But then from all of that, you had only then had a relationship with one person.
Right.
And how old were you when you had that relationship?
I was 25.
25.
Yes.
So it's interesting because I got married at 25.
Wow. You started your frustration at 25.
You said that your ex-partner was avoidant.
Yeah.
But you walked in there secure.
Yeah. Did I leave secure? That's the question.
Oh, cool.
One thing I have learned about attachment styles, and one thing I didn't know prior to that relationship in hindsight, is that the way someone loves you can have a massive impact on your existing attachment style. Being with a secure person undid a lot of that damage, right? And I don't want to say damage in a bad way, because my ex is not a bad person at all. He had things he struggled with that shaped the way he navigated the relationship, and that then shaped the way I saw myself and navigated that relationship. I walked out of that relationship with a more anxious attachment style because I'd spent 6 years essentially of my life back and forth, to and fro, push and pull, trying to prove my value to someone in a way that encouraged them to want to commit in a traditional sense, right? I was constantly thinking about where his head was at. I wasn't getting the reassurance that I desperately wanted. And I would question myself, question my role in the relationship, question the value of the relationship. And then when I left that relationship, I remember thinking that, God, I used to be so sure of myself and so confident when it came to love and relationships. And now I'm not so sure. And I had to do a lot of self-work before meeting Taiwo, a lot of self-work. Even with I Wish I Knew This Earlier, my first book, people always go up to me thanking me for helping them, but they don't realize in writing it, I helped me.
Yeah.
I wrote that book to help me, to remind myself of all the things that I needed to remind myself of. So I did a lot of self-work.
Can we talk about that practically? Because what you just said is something that most people, I don't believe, know.
Yeah.
And that is that your partner can change your attachment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that you can move from being in a place of secure attachment to anxious or avoidant, or anxious avoidant.
Yeah.
And so that by itself is something that, we need to say, okay, wow, this is massive.
Yeah.
But then to your point but you can then flip back.
Yes, you can.
You could bounce back.
Yeah, you can bounce back.
You can bounce back. Yeah. So you recognize that you were anxious and you needed to bounce back. You needed to do the work. And everyone talks about do the work, but you did the work.
Yes.
What was the work?
So for one, not dating. So there were points in my life where I would take entire years out and be like, no, I need to focus on me. So eradicating that distraction, right? Knowing that I still had that work to do. There was a lot of counseling or therapy. So speaking to someone else about my experiences, right? And being the eldest of 3 siblings in an African family, I did not always feel like I could go to people, not because they did not save space for me, but because I felt like I had to be the strong one, right? I'm the firstborn. My siblings come to me for support. Yeah. I can't be burdening them with my emotional issues. That is how I felt. And I perpetuated that by not wanting to speak to people about things I was struggling with, to the point that my family and friends would say after that relationship ended, are you okay? Because they didn't see me cry. I was it was like nothing, right? The way I was acting anyway. And my best friend was like, Toni, like, I'm worried for you because you seem perfectly fine. And that was a relationship that took up like most of your 20s. Like, is everything okay? And I remember being like, oh yeah, everything's cool. You know, you win some, you lose some. It is what it is. Like, you know what? Like, I was very much whatever about it. And I think the biggest thing for me was reinvesting into myself, right? Pouring into myself, because in that relationship, I poured so heavily into the other person and I forgot about me. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't really understand like who I was outside of a relationship context. And I had to start all over again. And I had to be like, okay, what are my values? What are my non-negotiables? Because I was blurring lines in that relationship like you were. And I was like, okay, what do I want? And I remember writing a list of like the kind of life I wanted, writing a list about the kind of like partner I wanted, writing a list about the kind of relationship I wanted, like physically writing those lists.
You know, you were lost and then you found yourself.
Yes, I was so lost. So lost.
Yeah.
And I literally.
You found yourself.
Yeah.
And you were lost.
Yeah.
And you found yourself.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about how you find each other. Okay. Because from what I understand already is that you like to do your diligence. You like to do your research.
Yes.
So you must have been researching Toni here.
Yes.
Okay.
How many years were you following me before I noticed?
I need to know
How many years
this.
were you following me before I noticed it?
Why would you do this to me?
How many years?
2020? Right? Yes. COVID happened. I used to edit videos and then I started, I would send them to my family group. I'll never post them online. So I said, you know what? I don't have much to do for 6 months, 7 months. Might as well just post the same videos I've been editing. And then I saw this lady that kept tweeting. And all her tweets seemed to align with everything I keep talking about, except that she managed to do it in fewer words. People that know me know that I do better with video content than tweets.
Yes.
So I would make a 2-minute video talking about something. She says the same thing in one tweet. I said, you know what? Let me just look for this person. I just clicked on their page and I was like, oh, she fine too? She's not just smart.
When you hit IG, what specifically are you looking for?
Back then? No, I'll answer. I don't have a problem with it. I'll answer. Back then or
back then.
Back then.
What were you looking for? Because
Right.
and I'm not trying to set you up on this.
I don't have a problem with it.
It's like,
That's fine.
I think the ladies need to know.
Yes, right.
Right. So what were you looking for?
Personally, finding an attractive woman was never my issue. It was finding an attractive woman. No, not like that. I'm not saying I'm God's gift to women, but I try. But when I saw her tweets and I saw what she looks like, I was like, okay, based on what I know on a surface level, brains check, beauty check. If I was in the market, she would be great. I had this insane mindset of thinking that I need to be successful first and then find the woman.
Really?
That thing keeps a lot of guys single.
So this is interesting. So was it because that you were not working at the time?
No, not even that. I just was obsessed with thinking that I would have to be very successful first in life before I then go and find my future wife.
And how would you qualify success at that time?
Good question. So primarily I work in tech. And in my mind, I felt like I need to create something groundbreaking that's known, whether it's a new type of algorithm for quantum computing or it's a new type of render engine that I work on for animation, just something really groundbreaking. One of those. And then that would be my own criteria for success. And then after that, let's find a wife. But what changed for me was one day I had to talk with one of my friends in church. And he just said something really short and simple. He said, who are you to think that that's going to happen for you in that way? Like life can happen in a different order, but then at the same time, what if by God's divine timing, it's not supposed to happen in that order? What if you end up getting that goal and then you never find that person, the person that God has assigned for you? What if you miss that person because you are so focused on trying to get to that goal and it never happens? What if God wants you to meet that person and then push it to that part? And when I did, January of 2021...
I think he'd been following me for was it a year and a half, 2 years.
A year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah,
yes.
he'd been following me.
Yeah. Can you believe this? This is an amazing story. I didn't know. You saw all this. And
No, I didn't see that. I saw a video that he did where he was talking about a dating experience he had and how he took a girl on a date and she was like shocked he didn't try and sleep with her afterwards. And he was basically saying that like, it's actually really sad that this is the state of the world, that a man respecting you and not trying to like rush this process is like shocking. And when I saw that video, I was like, oh, okay, I like the way he thinks. Follow. So I followed him. And then when I went to our messages, I'd seen that Ty and Ija mentioned you in 2021, mentioned you in 2020, mentioned you in 2019. So he had been like posting my content on his stories and tagging me, and I just did not see any of it. I've always strategically positioned myself and see if the guy approaches me, right? And then with Taiwo, I think I attempted that several times. I literally messaged my girls to say, you see this Ty and Ija guy on Instagram? I said, I'm done with this dude. The day I say to my girls, I'm done, I get a message from him saying that, oh, he wants to have a chat with me on the phone. I was like, look at God. God literally heard me say, I have given up this man. I'm done with him. Hypothetically, for like women listening, like the world is not going to end if you make the first move. And I think for a lot of women, if it's not fear of rejection, it could be like feeding into these very traditional views that a man should make the first move, right? A man should show he's interested.
How soon after, Toni, that phone call, did you send the tweet saying that you've met your future husband?
Okay, so the first thing that happened, the tweet came afterwards. The first thing was me messaging my mum and my friend, that same friendship chat where I was like, I've given up on this guy. And my mum was like, hey, slow down. This is it for me. I can tell. My gut has told me this is it. And they were like, whoa.
I've heard you talk about you're demisexual.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd love for you to explain. Yeah. So what is demisexuality?
Okay. So a lot of people experience like sexual attraction off the bat, right? They can be sexually attracted to someone walking through a room. I can acknowledge that men are attractive men, but there is absolutely nothing within me that feels any type of sexual desire or arousal for them in any way, right? That only comes after I have developed an emotional connection to them based on who they are and their character.
Okay.
So it like, for example, I've never had a one night stand. I've never met someone in a club and kissed a random person. My girlfriends will see a guy and be like, oh, he can get some. I'm like, no one can ever get anything unless I know them.
We'd have to have 3 months of long conversation first.
Literally.
Demisexuality is when someone only feels sexual attraction after forming a deep emotional bond. Unlike others with sexual orientation based on instant attraction, which is often called allosexuality, a demisexual person needs a connection rooted in someone's character and values. You might even be demisexual without realizing it, and knowing your orientation can be powerful. It helps you understand your own needs, set healthy boundaries, and feel validated in how you experience attraction. Recognizing this about yourself can lead to more fulfilling and authentic relationships. You're living in 2 different countries, and now you have to begin to manage this relationship.
Yeah.
So what have you learned? What are some of these lessons around how do you keep this relationship together? How do you keep it hot? How do you keep it sexy? And I will say, in full transparency, I hope he doesn't get at me at this. I have a really good friend who's living, away from his partner, actually away from his wife. They're having a tremendously hard time. They see each other infrequently, and they've begun to talk about emotional infidelity. And which to some people hits much harder than physical. Right. And so how do you manage this relationship living in 2 different countries?
I feel like long distance relationships can be very hard, particularly on women, if they don't feel reassured. I feel entirely reassured in this relationship based not just on his words, but on his actions. I am the number one priority. I never feel like I'm not, right? So I would say like that's a big thing, and that makes why am I getting teary? he loves me in a way that I don't question anything, you know? And I've never been loved like that before, where I could be on Mount Everest, right? But I'm so sure of the love he has for me because he loves me harder than I feel like I love him. It was the first time in my life being with someone and feeling like, oh, like they're out loving me. But it's beautiful. I'm crying because I'm just like, I feel so blessed to have like met him and to have this kind of love, because I know that not everyone experiences it, but the distance is easy because he loves me with everything, you know?
Isn't it so beautiful to see your life's journey and to be able to see, to see the two of you, you know, we all go through the storm in life, but the sun always comes out and it shines bright. You know, I'm curious about is beyond the wedding, then what does the relationship look like? Do we move to the same city or do we stay? Because a lot of relationships now are still living apart but together.
Right, that's true.
So what's the plan?
So we actually kind of talked about that on our very first call. But then, so we kind of...
on the 90-minute call.
On the 90-minute call.
Yes.
You already had it worked out.
So we are already planning on, you know, the long-term plans on where we're going to live in Houston.
For me, it was like, okay, on a logical level, we are where we are. What makes sense for us, right? And it's funny because even though at the beginning he was like, I'm not moving to London, every time he visits, he's like,
that's true. That's true.
I might convince you. I might convince you.
Come on.
Please.
I thought I was going to be here for 3 months. That was 6 years ago.
Wow.
On that though, I wonder because there must be, even though you're long distance, there still must be conflict. There must be disagreements.
Oh yeah, we have disagreements.
We have a rule.
So how do you manage conflict, especially because it's long distance?
Oh, you want to
Well, in the beginning, I had to adjust because typically in conflict, in relationships, I would need time to myself to manage my thoughts, if you will, right? And I think when you're physically in the same space, it's much easier to do that because the person knows, oh, she's in the other room, I'm in my room, and we're both taking some downtime, right? But when you're completely away from each other, it can appear as if you're withdrawing. Mm-hmm. So I had to adjust because sometimes we'd have conflict and I'd be like, I'm trying to speak to this man. He's calling me. I'm like, I'm picking up this phone call. Like, I'm not trying to talk to him. And after he expressed that, look, if we have conflict, because he said to me, because of the distance, we should try and resolve it as soon as possible because unlike other couples, we're not in the same vicinity. You know, like other couples, they argue, then they make up or they physically make up or they kiss and hug and it's all hunky-dory. We can't do that. All we have is communication. So if I'm limiting communication, then that's going to hurt more than it's going to help. The goal is talk. If we have to be on the phone for 4 hours, we have to be on the phone 4 hours. But we're going to talk until we get to a resolution.
That's interesting because a lot of the advice that you'd hear, like the Gottmans, for example, you know, they talk about how you get into a disagreement, there's conflict, you're emotionally flooded.
Right.
And so it's very hard to then resolve if you're emotionally flooded. So the best thing to do, even if you're long distance, is give it time, give it space, get to a point where you're regulated and then you can resolve it. If that means later in the day or if that means tomorrow.
Right.
But your approach, it sounds like is, okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to stay on the task.
Yes.
Yeah.
And talk until you just get tired. You're like, whatever.
The reason like we agreed on that approach is because whenever we have an argument, the goal is not to try and be right. It's to try and understand each other's perspective. I always say that. It's to understand each other's perspective. That has worked for us beautifully. It might take hours of calls, but it's worth it because I've always told her that if we take time off and revisit the issue 2-3 days later, we're not together. It gives people room to assume or start having different thoughts about the other person in their absence. So face it while you can, as soon as you can, to prevent the other person from overthinking.
I understand why the Gottmans say what they say, because to do what we do, I do think you have to have a certain personality type. Now, if you're someone who is highly strung, then by all means have that time, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you say something you regret or you do something you regret. We approach it with a level of calm, right? Taiwo is very gentle. Like, I've never seen you get like angry. He thinks he's been. I've never seen this man get angry.
Saying, all your anger.
He loves to say, "All your anger cannot boil beans." This is like,
I say that all the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
all your anger cannot boil beans.
He says that all the time, and I think because we both have this personality type, even when we're at the height of I'm so pissed off, we can sit down and be like, "Bruh,
right?
What are we doing about this?"
Toni and Taiwo show us that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to handling conflict in relationships. Now, if you look back at our episode with the Gottmans, they suggest taking space to cool off. Toni and Taiwo stay connected through talking through their disagreements for hours if needed. Now, I love how they demonstrate that you can apply your own rules to your relationship. Remember, different strategies work for different people. What do you believe is the biggest misconception about your relationship? And
that's a good question.
Wow, I never thought about that.
And here's why I want to unpack it is that, and one of the reasons of like 20, why I wanted to have you two here is that I think that, you two are very apparent online.
Yeah.
Very present online.
Yeah.
And there's one school of thought that says, you know what, when you're in real love, don't showcase that.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is the biggest misconception.
Okay. That is it. Okay.
The biggest misconception is that it cannot be as good as it looks because we are public about it. And we always joke that it's better behind closed doors. And that is the biggest misconception, that if you post your wife, you post your husband, you share anything about your relationship, that it has to be very flawed in some way. And I find it funny, to be fair. I find it funny because obviously, like, Paul, I follow you. You post your wife, you post your kids. Right?
Yeah, I get the same thing. So you're answering for me right now.
And I don't know you personally on that deep level, but I have faith in your relationship that it is what it is. I understand the logic to a degree, but at the same time, there are always outliers and it's not one rule for everybody. I think the biggest misconception about him, because he is stereotypically attractive black man who lives in Houston, Texas, who works in tech.
I know where this is going. Yeah.
I feel like
I know this is going.
Some people believe there is no way he can be as loving and as nice and as loyal as he is.
One thing that kept me single was I would go out to an event and then I'll talk to someone and immediately they would say, you're a demon. That's a term people used to say, like, oh, you're a cheater or something like that. And I would ask them, are you joking? And they would say, no, I'm serious. And I would just say, have a good day. You are preparing to fail. Why should I go further with that?
Great for me.
You're assuming that I'm already up to no good just by seeing me without giving me a chance. So at least I just want to say thank you to them for keeping you single.
Keeping you single,
yeah. So it was great for me. And I think generally people are of the opinion that attractiveness is synonymous with infidelity.
Yeah.
And do you know what's funny, Paul? I actually think it's the opposite. I don't know whether there's data to back this up, but this is my theory. So people think if someone is highly attractive, that there is no way they can be loyal in a relationship because they have an array of options potentially, right? When I actually think that if someone is attractive, because they are used to getting attention and because they have an array of options, they have the privilege of being more choosy, right? And because they are more selective and more choosy, there is no excitement and rush when someone shows them attention because it's like, I have options. I don't need to take every option that comes my way because I can choose when I wish to take up certain opportunities with people, right? But if you're someone who you don't get much attention, then attention may potentially mean way more to you. And you want to grasp at every woman that comes your way because, oh my God, she's showing me attention. But if you're used to getting it all the time everywhere, you're kind of desensitized, right? People say, oh, I like medium ugly because when a guy's too hot, like they can't be trusted. And I'm like, why? If he's attractive, like, why does that mean that he's not going to have certain values and he's not going to be
There is zero correlation between attractiveness and
absolutely
being
no correlation.
faithful. Like, why do they build that?
Being like societally, stereotypically attractive and linking that to infidelity, I'm like, nah, I actually think, no, maybe I would probably say maybe it's the opposite, actually.
So this begs the question, what is a good man?
It's someone that keeps to his word. It's someone that's able to take on ownership of responsibilities, whether it's for his family or his partner. It's someone that's able to show kindness to people regardless of who they are and where they're coming from. That is very important. As a man, I feel like you should be able to regulate those emotions in a very healthy amount, and you should be able to express that, because, I feel like that's a very important aspect that drives our actions as human beings.
You're saying that a piece of masculinity is emotional regulation.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
I've not heard it said like that succinct before.
Yes.
But that to me, that balances. So that to you that's masculinity. That's modern masculinity.
A lot of guys would say that, well, that is not true. But then they forget that a lot of actions that men have taken throughout the centuries have been based off their emotion. Wars have been started because of
lack of emotional
anger and
regulation.
emotion.
Running your own business? Listen in for a great offer from today's sponsor, Shopify. You know when you go on an amazing first date and you get that rush of excitement? It's the same thrill business owners get when they hear Shopify's iconic, another customer, another sale, another reminder that someone out there loves what you've got to offer. I've got plenty of products in the pipeline, but finding a platform to house them on has been a challenge until I found Shopify. It's the commerce platform where I can sell in multiple places like TikTok and Instagram. And it's all done through the same customizable online store. Shopify has the tools to take your business to the next level. And now you can try it for £1 per month while the period applies. Head to shopify.co.uk/need to talk and let me know how you get on. I need to come clean and tell you about the love affair I've been having these last 2 years. But before you start thinking that I'm disloyal, don't worry, my wife knows everything. Because even Jill can't ignore how truly, madly, deeply in love I am with the new show sponsor, Huel. Hand on my heart, I carry up to 3 Huels with me every day. Some might even call me a hardcore Huel drinker. And they'd be right, I am. My days start early, so drinking my ready-to-drink Black Edition Vanilla is such a convenient way for me to fuel my body with great nutrition. But the part I love most is Huel is a complete meal packed with 35 grams of protein plus 26 vitamins and minerals to help me thrive. So whether I'm traveling, on set, or recording, I know Huel will keep me feeling good. If you're tempted to have a love affair of your own, visit Huel.com and use code Paul for 15% off your next order. That's HUEL.com. So I went through your 2 books, pulled out a million things. I think given how we've talked, it would take us 10 hours to go through all of these. So almost like in quick fire, I want to ask you about some of these concepts. Okay. And Taiwo, please jump in on these. All right. So the first one is on you gut instinct. You kind of have talked about that. That was like the impractical even. Yeah. But it's something that you deeply believe in is gut instinct. Yeah. So what is it? What is gut instinct? Why is it so important in relationships?
So gut instinct, I would describe as a physiological feeling. Like it's a feeling you have in your being that something is either right or wrong, right? Now, people often assume that gut instinct comes from nowhere, but I actually think that gut instinct is a physiological response to something that is actually happening, right? Or has happened. It could be a subconscious observation. So for example, some women will say, I have a gut feeling he's cheating, right? The gut feeling that they think has come from nowhere is because something has changed in their partner's habits or behavior, even if subtly, that they have subconsciously picked on that is feeding this gut feeling. Okay. Or you may have a gut feeling this person's a bad person. I have a gut feeling. The gut feeling may be because of body language, because when they're talking to you, they might not be looking you in the eyes. It could be because of just how they move when they're around you. They could be facing their back towards you. And you think this gut feeling is this whimsical thing, when in reality, it's a subconscious observation that is feeding a physiological response. So I say to people that pay attention to your physical, pay attention to your body, pay attention to your gut, pay attention to how you feel when you are around people. Pay attention to whether you feel scared, you feel afraid. Pay attention to whether you feel comfortable, you feel at peace. Like, for example, they say that when you're with someone that makes you feel comfortable, you often feel very sleepy around them. Because you feel, because there's a willingness to rest.
Yes.
If you fall asleep, you're not scared of what could happen because of the comfort that they provide.
Well, I've never heard of that, but that makes sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow, that is incredible.
So I would say, that's gut instinct to me. Pay attention to your body's physical response to your surroundings and to the people around you.
Okay. I love it. So when I go home, just fall asleep.
Yeah.
That's how I know it's love.
That's how you know it's love.
All right, fair.
Just fall asleep. I feel love.
Yeah. That's love. Talking about love, what is struggle love?
Oh, struggle love.
Struggle love is when one party is going above and beyond to try and give enough love for two. Forgetting that that's not how it works. Yeah. So I can give you specific examples. Okay. That would be like the guy that is not just going above and beyond to make the girl happy, but at the same time, he sees certain things that he doesn't want to entertain the relationship, whether it's communication patterns or, maybe they're being a little too flirtatious with their guy friend. And he knows those are things that he doesn't really like. But then he's still willing to be like, well, as long as she comes home, that kind of thing. It puts one in a place where you are going above and beyond and not getting anything back or as much back, which creates the struggle that you are sweating and getting nothing
back.
Yeah. And to follow on from that, I would say it's like struggle love is feeling like you have to go above and beyond to prove your value, to prove to someone that you are deserving of love, right? Yeah. That there are certain hurdles you must encounter, must face, just to qualify, that you must progress from in order to qualify for that reciprocative love. Like being in a relationship and feeling like you have to put up with infidelity because it will show that I'm loyal, I'm down for him, and he's gonna want to be with me and want to give his all even more. That's an example of struggle love. It's feeling like you have to go through hardship in order to prove that you are worthy to be loved.
Were both of your previous relationships struggle love?
No.
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say I went through. Commitment phobia was there, but I wouldn't say that I had to prove my value to be loved. I do feel that all my past partners loved me. I do, but some of them loved me in ways that were unhealthy to them. Okay. That caused damage in our relationship. Part of struggle love is going against your boundaries and non-negotiables.
Okay.
Right. When I got to the point where I was faced with a non-negotiable, that's when everything was called quits. But up until that point, it was more so dealing with
compromises.
Yeah, childhood traumas and dealing with commitment issues, but not in a way that the person insinuated I had to do this to be treated adequately.
Okay, fair. And that helps me better understand struggle love.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. Struggle love is a new concept for me. I find it fascinating. Now, it's when one partner feels they need to go above and beyond, often sacrificing their own needs and boundaries just to prove they're worthy of love. This can lead to exhaustion and resentment, with one person giving far more than they receive. Oftentimes, there's a kind of like this narrative of, men are intimidated by confident women.
Yeah.
Right. So I must ask a confident woman this question.
Yeah.
Is what's your opinion on intimidation?
Do I think that some men are? 100%. I think I would joke that my DMs would be popping when I had 1,000 followers. Oh my God, my DMs on Instagram popping. When I had 100,000 followers, crickets.
Really?
Oh my God. You would think that on a logical, mathematical level, I would have more direct messages from men trying to hit on me or date me or whatever with higher numbers, when in actuality, it was the reverse. The more my accounts grew, the more my public profile grew, the less men would approach me online, or men who knew of me would approach me in person. If a man approached me in person, he probably didn't know that I do what I do. So I do think it occurs. I think that unfortunately, there are some men, and I think this ties into what you said about feeling like you have to be successful, right? Some men believe they have to be very, very financially successful or very, very entrepreneurially successful in life before they approach a relationship, let alone approaching a relationship with a woman that they feel already has some kind of success. When you are a woman and on the surface, you have what they would deem as success, and you have a strong career, or you're very confident or very outspoken, I think some men see that as unattainable, and they feel like they have to be in a certain place to even approach you. Then there are the men who are intimidated by that because they may feel that you are outperforming them, and they feel that as a man, they want to be the breadwinner. They want to be the person with a career. They want someone who will support them in their goals and may not necessarily have their own career. Then you have the men who do not respect confident women or women who are ambitious. They see it as masculine to be an ambitious woman and not feminine. Why do you not want to be in the home? Why are you focused on having a career? Why is your career important to you? So yeah, I think the intimidation thing definitely exist, and some men feel as if it would be an uncomfortable dynamic for them to date a woman who is successful because it impacts their ego in some way. But then I do say to my female friends who are ambitious, who are successful, who are outspoken, who are confident, they're just not the men for you. Like, do less men approach you? Yes, but then you are also acting as a filter. You are you're filtering out the men who are immediately intimidated. Some will still filter through, but you filter out the men who are immediately intimidated. And in filtering them out, even though it's a smaller number that you're dealing with, it's men who are potentially don't ascribe to those toxic masculine beliefs that, oh, a man has to be here or a woman has to be below him.
And your antidote to that is never dim your light.
Oh, never.
Yes. Just keep feeding it. Feed it.
Yes.
Feed it.
Yeah.
Filter them out. Filter them out. Literally. There was a time in my life where I thought, would I have to dim my light? Like, I was getting like no success when it came to like men approaching me. And I thought, am I doing too much? Am I saying too much? Am I being too loud? And I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, the man who loves me for me is going to love me for me as a whole, exactly who I am. What did some of your friends say about me?
Yes. So like, take for example, I actually played some of those guys. When we were now official, I told them that, oh, there's this girl I'm talking to called Toni. I didn't let them know they were official just to see what they would say. And some of them said that, hey, are you sure she's going to respond to your messages? Oh no, she looks like she's not your level or stuff like that. And in that moment, it made me realize that people say words like level and stuff because they're comparing it to where they are in their life. That's first of all. Secondly, even if it's from a point of not measuring like things like finance and stuff like that, it comes from a place of realizing that they don't think that they have enough value to add to their life, which is why in my case, people ask me, did I feel nervous about approaching her? I felt zero nervousness. She knows. Because I was like, I know I did the homework on myself. I also knew that whichever woman I'm going to meet, she is also lucky to have me in her life because I know how much I'm able to add as far as value when it comes to being there for her as a partner, to be her prayer partner, not a prayer point.
There's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
Because I knew how much value I'm also able to add in her life.
Or they think you're too expensive. That's another one. They can be intimidated because they think they cannot afford you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I've had guys say to me, I can't afford you.
Yeah, just talk to the girl and find out.
Who just met you?
Yeah, I'm like, huh? You
talk to the girl and find out. Don't just assume the worst.
Yeah, like there people make a lot of assumptions. And I think the way you carry yourself like contributes to that. Society contributes to that. And there are social signifiers that contribute to that. But I think sometimes I would have men see me or see a picture and they don't know that my like dress is from ASOS that costs £40. My earrings are cubic zirconia. My bracelet could be cubic zirconia. My shoes, I got them for like $20 in a sale when
Well, you wear them well, so
and so they'll see that and they'll think, oh, she looks really, really expensive. And my whole outfit is like $100. But they have this opinion based on so many other things that they've glued together. It's interesting how people can tell themselves things about you that may not even necessarily be true. And don't get me wrong, I'm expensive for myself, definitely.
Right.
Like I'm expensive for myself, but I've never been someone who enters a relationship and makes lots of financial demands. People would be intimidated by my public profile because they think followers equals wealth, right? When we first dated, another misconception was that I was super rich and Taiwo was broke. And the funny thing was that my income fluctuates. And like the first time we were together, he vastly outperformed me, right? And even this year, right now, he's outperforming me. But because he has a 9-to-5 and I don't, they think he doesn't have money and I do. And when we first got together, Tinder Swindler was on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
They were calling him Tinder Swindler on like blogs and stuff.
We were having a laugh.
I found it hilarious because I found it hilarious, right? Because I know what he does. Like he's like I said, on paper, he's a high performing, like he did a great job. I'm not going to sell him, right? Like, I'm not going to push his market price.
I have, I think about like, you go into an interview like this, there's all these places that you'd like to go. We went to all of the places and more. I'm completely full. It's like, I was like, I loved everything, but I want to give you two an opportunity here. So is there anything that we have not talked about that you want to discuss?
Yes.
I'll say this. My entire team got laid off in 2019, and that led to me making content, which led to this happening. So when I think about life like that, don't talk yourself out of blessings. If things don't work out for you in the way they should, it could redirect you into the blessing that could, come your way. When you meet that person in terms of the relationships, if everything is going great and there are no red flags, don't create any in your head. Don't try and develop an amber flag or say, what if it doesn't work? I've seen people do that. They talk themselves out of it by saying that everything is going great. They communicate daily. They actually say what they mean. They're intentional. They plan dates.
That's be true.
I don't know. Maybe they got someone else they're doing this for. Why? They didn't give you a reason to. So I know some people rather not trust everyone until they give them a reason to. I just think it's a more harder way to live when you're constantly not trusting people, because you're going to have to trust someone. So, just go with a life of just, being optimistic and trusting people until they give you a reason not to. I think it's a better way of living because at the end of the day, you want things to work out. And then there was something I saw the other day online, which I never forgot. It said that, you haven't experienced all your happiest days yet. And that thought alone is very true. There are times where people go through down moments, but then when you have those up moments, you sometimes forget that, at one time I was at my lows. And that alone always reminds me that, always look on the good side of life. Bad does happen in life, but you can choose where you're going to focus on most of the time.
Yes.
So I hope more people do this. It definitely will help in terms of life and relationships.
Yes. Well said. There's one last question that I like to ask everyone. You've lived incredible lives, and that means that you've had very strong conversations, life-changing conversations with people. So when you think back to the most memorable conversation that you've had, not with each other though, who was that conversation with? The most memorable conversation? Who was it with? And what did you talk about?
I don't know if this is the most memorable, but this is what immediately came to mind because it was probably one of the most powerful. There's a conversation I had with my siblings and my father about ways he could have been a better dad. my dad taking ownership for some of the things that he did wrong and apologizing for them in my adult life. So acknowledging that as children, it wasn't always easy for us, partially because of things that he contributed to. So this was in my early 30s or late 20s, early 30s. He had written us a letter, and just talking through that letter and saying, look, I could have done this differently. And, or even just sitting with my brother and saying, look, one of the worst days of my life was when this happened, and I will never forget this, and I'm sorry for this, and apologizing to my brother for certain things. So I think that was one of the most memorable, to see a parent take accountability for the times, not that they were failing, but they were learning. And I say learning because I want to show grace to him for the fact that when he was a parent to us as children, I forget, my dad got married in his late 20s. He was in his 30s. I'm in my 30s now. We're 35. And to think that he was managing parenthood in his 30s, sometimes I forget. When you're a child, you think your parents are all knowing, all doing.
Yes.
And then now I'm in my 30s, I'm like, dang, I'm struggling to take care of ourselves right now. And I'm like, wow, I see why this might have happened. I see why he may have reacted like this. I see why he may not have prioritized this. Not to make excuses, because he has acknowledged his wrongdoing. I know that he could have been better. He acknowledges that. But also just having that conversation, that two-way conversation, and saying, you know what, I forgive you. I accept your apology. I'm glad you can see how you could have been better.
Yes.
But I want you to know that I also understand why you weren't as good as you could have been.
You wrote about that.
I did.
You know, it's one of those where I can see that it not only was profound for you, but for him.
Yeah. I think it was for us, and I say us, my siblings and I, it was a great weight lifted.
It was powerful. So what was it most profound? And then who was it with?
The sad part is that I only realized it after they had passed. My family doesn't know this, I'm about to say. But there was a day me and him went out for, give or take, 5-6 hours. He was like, Taiwo, let's go for a drive. And for almost 6 hours, he just kept giving me his blueprint to life. Like, I was 19, but 18 turning 19, like when that happened, in ways he had never talked about our entire life. So imagine getting one version of your father, and then you're hearing a whole different version you have never heard your entire life, talking about how, please, if you get an opportunity that benefits you, but puts your family at a disadvantage, pick your family. He would tell me stuff like that. He would tell me how that family comes first. When you are married, always make sure that they are cared for. And I'm not just talking about provisions. I'm talking about in other areas of their life. Always tell. And it's crazy because we had a conversation, and then I went to college, and then 2 months later it passed. And throughout the entire 6 hours, I remembered everything. He kept telling me that there's a Nigerian saying we say, they don't have two heads. It's a statement we use whenever we see someone that's doing really well. Instead of saying that, oh man, this is so hard for us to do, we look at it and say that they don't have two brains. We can do it too. He instilled that mindset in me throughout that same call. And I remembered all that, but I never really, took it to heart till after he passed. And then everything just hit me. It's almost like he knew that was going to be the last actual conversation we had. So I never forgot those. And a lot of the things that have guided my way of thinking in life, not even just relationship, have been shaped based off that one meeting.
Was that the last conversation you had?
That was the last long conversation we've ever had. The rest was just on the phone. After that, we'll travel to US. Then the rest was just on the phone. Just like, how you doing? That was it.
Wow.
That was the last time.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
That's going to stay with me.
Yeah.
The reason why I love that question is because what I do is I take that and say, okay, how can I take those stories and honor those people? So I'm going to honor your father. I'm going to honor your father by taking that and applying that to my life. right? So thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Thank you so much.
It's been incredible. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Now that was an incredible episode. And here are my takeaways. The first lesson from this episode that resonates deeply with me because it's something that I work to live by as well is when Toni spoke about how communication and quality time are the foundation of family bonds. This is a takeaway that extends to all relationships. Being intentional with our words and making real time for each other builds openness and connection that lasts. So let us commit to those meaningful conversations and shared moments because they are what creates relationships that stand the test of time. Number 2, healing from past relationships starts with intentional self-discovery and self-care. Toni shared how investing in herself through counseling and therapy helped her rebuild confidence and clarity, preparing her to enter a new relationship from a place of strength. When we commit to this kind of inner work, we regain our confidence and approach future connections with openness and self-assurance. It reminds us that the relationship we build with ourselves is the foundation for any lasting connection that follows. And number 3, and here's my favorite lesson from this episode, Taiwo shared a powerful insight on conflict in relationships. Here's what he said: when we argue, the goal isn't to be right, it's to understand each other's perspective. This is a profound approach, shifting the focus from winning to empathy. Effective conflict resolution is about curiosity and respect rather than proving a point. When couples approach disagreements with a genuine interest to understand one another, it opens the door to healthier resolutions. It reduces lingering resentment and strengthens mutual respect. Taiwo's lesson is a reminder that lasting relationships are built not on always being right, but on always being willing to listen. And that's it. And before I go, I want to remind you of the stat that I mentioned earlier, and that is that about 92% of the people watching these videos are not subscribed yet. There's no pressure at all, but if you're enjoying the content, subscribing is a super simple way to stay connected with us, and it also helps us so much when growing the channel. It's free, it takes a second, and it's hugely helpful. Either way, we appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you. When it comes to love, we're all on our own journey. And that means any advice we're given should be tailored to our love goals, not someone else's. This is where my show and Tinder, who sponsor this podcast, have teamed up to help you. Each week on We Need to Talk, I'll explore love and relationships through a different lens, so you can get the advice that relates to your romantic situation. Tinder is for all types of relationships, and I truly believe it has the best tools to help you form the connections you're looking for. That might be long-term commitment or short-term experiences. Maybe it's friendship. But regardless of which part of the journey you're on, Tinder and I are here to support you. Their app is full of possibilities, and it's designed to help you explore every kind of connection. It starts with a swipe, so download Tinder today.